The heat pressed down on Chicago like a held breath. Concrete shimmered. Sirens blurred into the haze. And in the alley behind a luxury hotel, a woman in a pale yellow dress struggled alone, trying to lift 3 boxes into a freight elevator while the world rushed past her. No one stopped. Until he did. Ray Martinez. Street cleaner. Former muralist. A man with a broom, a busted radio, and paint still drying in his soul. He didn't ask who she was. He just helped. And everything changed. Because she wasn't just hotel staff. She was the new director, working undercover to see who still noticed kindness in a city built on noise. The soda he gave her. She kept the cap. The name on his badge. She remembered. What came next? An offer. A rooftop mural. A second chance at art and life, for a man the world had long forgotten. This is the true story of how one small act of decency sparked a movement, lit up a skyline, and proved that beauty doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sweeps quietly. A story about hidden portraits, soft revolutions, and what happens when the city finally sees the man who never stopped seeing it. Before we begin, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. Chicago's a city of fast feet and slow glances. You get used to people walking past like you're invisible, especially when you're holding a broom. Name's Ray Martinez. I'm 35, former muralist, current street cleaner, and full-time stubborn optimist. The art school I loved shut down 5 years ago. Budget cuts. That's how I ended up sweeping sidewalks by the back alley of a luxury hotel on Wabash in Ontario. People see a uniform and a trash can on wheels and assume things. That I gave up. That I missed my shot. But that day, that one hot Thursday in August, everything changed. And it started with a box. Well, a woman and a box. She was maybe early 30s, in a pale yellow summer dress and heels too nice for cargo work. Struggling to lift 3 awkward boxes into a service elevator behind the Mirrodale Hotel. No one stopped. Not the valet. Not the concierge sneaking a smoke break. Not even the delivery guy who nearly clipped her with a hand truck. Me. I leaned on my broom, watched her lose a battle with gravity, and called out, "You're gonna dislocate a shoulder, miss." She turned, flustered, cheeks flushed, sweat streaking her temple. They're light, just awkward. I walked over. Want a hand before gravity wins again? She hesitated. You don't have to. I know. Doesn't mean I won't. I hoisted the top box, linens by the feel, and loaded it in. She blinked like I'd just performed street magic. Thanks. I wasn't supposed to be doing this. The temp staff didn't show. I handed her my cold orange soda from the vending machine. You look like you need this more than I do. She took it, stunned, like no one had offered her a kindness in months. I'm Lana, she said quietly. I just started here. Ray, I said, tipping my cap. I've been here longer than I planned. She smiled, quick, tired, real. And then the elevator doors closed, and she disappeared. I didn't think I'd see her again. I figured that was it. One of those nothing moments that meant more to me than her. Boy, was I wrong. Because the next day, my supervisor called me into the office. And my stomach dropped. Martinez, he said, holding a small orange soda bottle cap. Someone at the Mirrodale asked for you by name. I thought I was being written up. That's usually what happens when someone says, come into the office, and closes the door. But instead, my supervisor, Ron, grumpy but fair, held up an orange soda bottle cap like it was a clue in a crime scene. This yours? He asked. I nodded, confused. Yeah. Dropped it near the Mirrodale. Why? He tossed it on the desk. Someone called about you. Said you helped her with a delivery. Said she found that cap and asked for the guy who drinks orange soda and jokes about gravity. That gave me pause. She called the department. Not just that, Ron grunted. She knew your name. That's when a second knock came, soft, polite, like it didn't belong in a place that smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. And there she was. Same woman. Same summer dress. But different. More polished. Less sweat. Heels that could probably cover my rent. She smiled like we shared a secret. Hey, she said. Ron stood up straighter. You're the Lana Griffin, she said, extending her hand. Director of the Mirrodale. Director? I blinked. That cargo elevator scene flashed back like a rerun in Fast Forward. She'd been loading boxes herself. Dressed like a temp. Not directing, sweating. She caught my confusion and said, I was doing an undercover review. Management quality. Teamwork. Integrity. That sort of thing. You were spying, I said with a crooked grin. She smirked. Let's call it research. Ron looked between us like he'd stepped into a different dimension. What exactly do you want with Mr. Martinez? I want to offer him a job, she said. That knocked the air out of me harder than the heat ever could. I'm serious, she continued. We're redesigning the Mirrodale's rooftop lounge. I need an artist with heart and perspective, someone who sees beauty in alleyways and back doors. I looked up your murals. The old ones. Cloud under concrete on 55th. That was yours. I nodded slowly, still stunned. How do you know that? She held up her phone. I read every article I could find last night. You stopped painting after the school closed. Yeah, I said. And now I clean up after people who step on my work. She stepped forward, voice softer. I'd like you to design a rooftop mural. The hotel will fund the project. Full creative control. Ron just whistled and sat back in his chair. Guess your break's over, Martinez. But for me, it was just beginning. I shook her hand, still unsure if this was real. She smiled, that same tired, quiet smile I'd seen the day before, and said, people passed me by. You didn't. You didn't know who I was, and you still helped. That's the kind of artist I want, painting where everyone can see. I hadn't held a paintbrush in nearly 4 years. Not since the school closed. Not since I boxed up my sketches and stored them in a closet so damp it probably erased a third of my portfolio. But that morning, I stood on the rooftop of the Mirrodale Hotel with the whole skyline sprawled out like a canvas someone else forgot to fill. Sunlight bounced off glass and steel. The river shimmered like a ribbon down the city's spine. Below, taxis honked, bikes weaved, and the world just moved. But up here, it was quiet. Still. Like time had climbed 12 stories just to sit down and catch its breath. And it was mine. Well, sort of. I had blueprints in one hand, a contract in the other, and nerves humming under my skin like bees in a jar. Overwhelming? Lana asked, standing beside me, her blazer catching the breeze like it was made for this moment. I've painted underpasses and playground walls, I said, squinting at the enormous blank wall ahead. This feels like I should have brought a priest. She laughed. That's why I wanted you. You see the soul in places most people skip. Easy for her to say. The truth is, when you stop painting, your hands forget things. You lose that instinct, how to move with the wall, how to let the brush tell the story before you overthink it. And now, this wasn't some quiet side street project. This was the rooftop of one of Chicago's premier hotels. People with actual money would see this. Critics. Tourists. Maybe even the mayor's assistant who pretended not to know me in line at a sandwich shop once. I cleared my throat. So, any requests? Lana tilted her head. Just one. She pointed toward the alley where we met. Start where no one's looking. That stuck with me. So that night, I stayed late. Alone on the roof, just me, the wall, and an old boombox that still played scratched cassettes like it had something to prove. I sketched a city wrapped in light. Fire escapes blooming with vines. Birds made of discarded paper flying between high-rises. A girl in a sundress lifting boxes with a determined jaw and a crooked smile. And in the corner, real small, almost hidden, I penciled in a street cleaner handing her a soda. I didn't even realize I was smiling until the stars showed up. By the end of the first week, the rooftop had changed. Not just the wall, the whole space. Something about paint in motion shifts the air. Staff started coming up on their breaks. A bartender brought me coffee. The night concierge left pastries wrapped in napkins by the stairwell. Even a couple of the high-up suits started dropping by, pretending to check the structural angles, while sneaking glances at the growing mural. I'd work for hours, headphones in, paint on my jeans, sweat streaking the sketch lines on my arms. And still, it felt like breathing for the first time in years. One afternoon, I stepped back to look at a section I'd just finished, an alleyway blooming into color, with vines crawling up old bricks and lanterns hanging between the rooftops. That's when I heard the voice. Damn. You painted life back into it. I turned. A tall guy, maybe late 20s, camera around his neck, smiled at me. Sorry, he added, I'm Owen. Photographer for the Chicago Scene blog. I raised a brow. You sneak up on everyone like that? Only the ones making magic, he said, snapping a shot before I could protest. Next day, the mural was on Instagram. By the weekend, it was on TikTok. By Monday, there was a local write-up. Former muralist reclaims the sky, Ray Martinez returns with rooftop resurrection. I didn't even know they remembered my name. I'd been invisible so long, I forgot what it felt like to be seen for something other than sweeping dust off sidewalks. Lana found me on the rooftop that evening, sipping from a paint-stained thermos. They're calling it the soul wall, she said, eyes on the skyline. I shrugged. I just draw what I wish was real. That's why it works. She sat on the edge of the planter beside me, quiet for a while. You know, she added, softer, when I took this job, everyone expected me to redecorate, cut costs, bring in more corporate guests. But I wanted the opposite. Wanted to plant soul instead of sell it. I said. She smiled. Exactly. I looked back at the mural. At the colors dripping into concrete. At the faces I'd sketched from memory, the busker on Dearborn, the girl who sells churros by the red line, the old lady with the pigeons. I just thought I was done, I admitted. Art, I mean. Like maybe that part of me ran out. It didn't, Lana said. You just needed someone to see it again. And that night, as the sun fell and the streetlights blinked on like cautious stars, I started sketching a new corner, one with a woman sitting on a loading dock, sipping orange soda, smiling at the city no one else noticed. By the third week, the mural wasn't just a cool rooftop thing anymore. It was an event. Tourists started asking staff for rooftop access. The Miradale created little laminated cards that said, "Artist at work, please be respectful." I even caught two influencers posing in front of a section I hadn't finished yet. They tagged me in a reel called Hidden Gems in the Sky. I'd never had a tag before. Just graffiti cleanup reports. Lana handled it like a pro, she limited access hours, kept it off the hotel's main tour, and gave me space. But I could tell, something was shifting. One morning, while I was sketching out the next section, a street violinist playing under a glowing L train, a stranger approached. Suit, briefcase, patent leather shoes. Definitely not hotel staff. You Martinez? I paused mid-line. Depends who's asking. He extended a crisp business card. Silver embossed. Gavin Sloan, Curation Director, Northside Collective. I raised a brow. Museum guy. Gallery, he corrected. But close. He stepped closer, squinting at the mural. You studied at Hyde Park Arts Institute, didn't you? My stomach tightened. Before it shut down. I remember your work. Angels on Fire Escapes, right? 2015 showcase. That hit me harder than I expected. No one had mentioned that piece in years. Not even me. Gavin continued, look, I'm curating a new exhibition, Modern City Myths. We're highlighting artists who shaped the soul of Chicago's neighborhoods. I want your story. Your voice. And, if you're willing, a permanent installation. I blinked. You want me, in a gallery? We cover materials, framing, even studio space if needed. Full creative autonomy. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Because the part of me that had packed up my brushes 4 years ago never thought anyone would come looking. He smiled like he'd seen that hesitation before. Talk to Lana, he added. She's the one who gave me your name. That surprised me. But I nodded. He left with a handshake and a promise to email the proposal. Just like that. Later that afternoon, Lana found me near the freight elevator. I didn't say anything. Just held up the card. She gave a small smile. He called last week. I wasn't sure when the right time was. I looked at her. Really looked. Why are you doing all this? Her gaze didn't flinch. Because when I was being passed by, you saw me. And that's when it hit me. I'd painted the mural to give people a city that sees them. That doesn't walk past. And now, that city was seeing me back. I've always believed every mural needs a heartbeat, something quiet that anchors the whole thing. Not the skyline. Not the splashy colors. Something subtle. Something personal. So I painted her. Not a full portrait. Nothing obvious. Just a profile, her face tucked into the curve of a window reflection on the 11th floor. Her hair pulled back the way it was that day by the cargo elevator. One hand resting on a box. The other holding an orange soda. If you weren't looking for her, you wouldn't notice. But if you saw her once, you'd see her every time. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Lana. Some things are better left whispered. The next few days passed in a blur of brushes, scaffolding climbs, and coffee gone cold before I could finish it. But I noticed something, people lingered longer near that window reflection. Not everyone. Just a few. The bartender, Jasmine, squinted up one day and said, that looks like someone I know. A hotel guest pointed it out to her husband, doesn't that look like the manager? And me? I just kept painting. A city official came by with a clipboard and used words like urban revitalization candidate. A columnist called the mural a prayer written in pigment. Someone even sent me a free box of brushes with a note, thanks for making concrete beautiful again. But one evening, just after sunset, Lana came up to the roof. She didn't say much. Just stood next to me while I was cleaning brushes. Then she nodded toward the window corner. How long's she been up there? I didn't pretend to misunderstand. Just rinsed the red from a brush and said, since day 5. She didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just folded her arms and said quietly, I didn't think I was someone people looked at like that. I turned toward her. That's the problem, isn't it? You were doing everything, running this place, helping staff, noticing people no one else saw, and not one soul stopped to say thanks. She shrugged. That's leadership. I shook my head. That's loneliness. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, I don't think I've ever been painted before. And I told her, you've been noticed. That's better. We stood in silence as the sky deepened behind the mural, turning the rooftops lavender and the city gold. It was the first time I realized this mural wasn't just saving me. It was healing something in her, too. It was one of those hazy August mornings where the sky looks like it hasn't made up its mind, somewhere between gold and gray, full of promise and threat. I was on the rooftop early, painting in the shadow lines under the bridge scene, when I noticed Lana standing near the edge. Phone pressed to her ear. Stiff posture. Silence between words. Not her usual style. She hung up and stayed still a while, hands in her pockets, eyes on the skyline like she was trying to memorize it. I kept painting. I knew the look. Same one I had when I got the call that Hyde Park was shutting down, when the place you've poured your soul into suddenly starts to slip through your fingers. Finally, she walked over. Big day? I asked, brushing a streak of sunlit gold over a second-story window. She gave a soft, almost tired smile. That was the Hellman Group. They're offering me a regional director position. Oversees 6 hotels. Travel. Big budget. Bigger team. I didn't stop painting, but my brush slowed. That's good, right? She didn't answer right away. They want me to start in 2 weeks, she said. Out of San Francisco. I nodded slowly, trying not to let it show. Well. That's what happens when you turn a hotel into a gallery. People notice. I don't know if I want it, she said quietly. That made me turn. You'd be incredible, I said. Maybe. But I wouldn't be here. I shrugged. The city'll still be here. So will the mural. She tilted her head. Would you? That one hit deeper than I expected. I looked at my hands. Paint-stained, calloused. I just started remembering what they were for. And part of that, most of that, was because of her. She stepped closer. You didn't just help me that day with the boxes. You reminded me who I was before the suits. Before the policies and the glass offices. Just a girl trying to lift something heavier than she could carry. I smiled. That's all of us, most days. Ray, she hesitated. If I go, will you be okay? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be the cool guy, the tough one, the muralist with the just happy to paint attitude. But instead, I said, I think I'll miss seeing someone look at this city like it's worth believing in. And that was the truth. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just stood there, 2 souls orbiting a decision neither of us could make without losing something. That night, I stayed on the roof past midnight. I added something new, a train car at the mural's edge, leaving the frame, full of passengers. But at the very front, a woman stood looking back at the city, one hand on the glass, the other holding a crumpled job offer in her coat pocket. A goodbye. A maybe. A memory. Chicago doesn't do quiet rain. When it comes, it barrels in sideways, wild, moody, uninvited, like the sky's got unfinished business with the ground. I was up on the Mirrodale rooftop when it hit. Clouds bruised purple rolled over the skyline, and wind started dragging easels across the concrete like warning bells. I scrambled to cover my supplies, draped a tarp over the scaffold, and ducked under the narrow overhang near the elevator shaft, soaked, cursing, laughing a little. And then the elevator dinged. She stepped out. No umbrella. Just a denim jacket over a white blouse already clinging to her shoulders. Hair plastered down, shoes soaked, but eyes, bright, focused, locked on me. San Francisco doesn't have storms like this, she said. No, I nodded. Just tech bros and better sushi. She smirked and joined me under the shelter. For a while, we just listened. The rain hitting the rooftop was deafening, constant. The city below faded into wet silhouettes. Lights flickered. Then, blackout. The hotel dimmed. Streetlights blinked out. Only the occasional flicker of lightning lit the skyline now, jagged and raw, like God taking flash photos of our mistakes. Lana folded her arms. Looks like we're stuck. You ever paint by lightning? I asked. She glanced at me. You ever confess things during blackouts? I raised an eyebrow. That a challenge? She leaned back against the wall. Might be. So we talked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just two voices in the dark. She told me about her first job, scrubbing floors at a hotel her uncle managed in Detroit. Said she used to leave notes for the housekeepers, little drawings of cartoon ghosts with "thank you" signs, so they'd smile. I told her how my first mural was painted with leftover church paint under a freeway bridge. How it got tagged over within a week, but someone added, "Leave the angel," so they did. We laughed. We paused. We let the silence fill with rain and old music drifting up from someone's window 8 floors down. And then she said it. I turned them down. I looked over. The job? I asked. She nodded. Told them this city isn't finished with me yet. I exhaled. Neither is this mural. Lightning flashed. In that split second, I saw her clearly, soaked, smirking, eyes soft but fierce. She leaned closer. I think I want to finish what we started. And for the first time in years, I felt something settle in my chest, not excitement, not victory. Peace. The kind that says, this might not last forever, but it's real right now. Later that night, after the rain faded to a whisper, I stepped back out and looked at the mural under the puddled rooftop lights. And I added one final detail to the window where Lana stood in the painting, her reflection, now faintly smiling. Not because she was leaving. Because she finally stayed. The morning of the unveiling felt like someone lit a match under the city. Sunlight poured through the buildings like it had somewhere to be. The rooftop of the Miradale buzzed with more people than I'd ever seen up there, staff in pressed shirts, string lights strung across the parapet, flower arrangements that probably cost more than my truck. There were pastries I couldn't pronounce. Jazz in the background. Guests with name tags and fake laughs. And somewhere in the middle of it all, me, in my cleanest jeans and the one collared shirt I owned that didn't have paint on it. Yet. I stood in the corner near the freight stairwell, watching people take photos with the mural like it was a celebrity. Some tilted their heads and said, "Ooh," at the skyline details. Others whispered guesses about the little faces tucked into corners. But none of that mattered. Not really. Because I was watching her. Lana. She moved through the rooftop like it was hers, which, in a way, it was. Hair pulled back, black blazer over a white dress, clipboard in one hand and coffee in the other. She smiled at everyone. Listened like she meant it. Stepped into conversations with that quiet gravity that makes people straighten their spines and pick up their glasses. But then, just for a second, she looked over at me. And the noise faded. She made her way over slowly, weaving through the crowd until she reached me. "I thought you weren't coming," she said. "I live 3 floors down," I smirked. "Tough commute." She handed me a folded note. "From the gallery guy, Gavin. He's here." I glanced around. Sure enough, there he was, linen suit, horn-rimmed glasses, circling the mural like a cat deciding if it approves of your couch. He said your piece, and I quote, "transcends utility." "I don't know what that means," I said. She smiled. "It means he wants to talk about a second project." That stopped me. I stared at the wall, all 40 feet of color and shadow and soul. The alley girl. The train scene. The paper birds. The small reflection of Lana in the window. "What do you think?" I asked her. She looked at the mural, really looked. Then said softly, "I think this wall's gonna outlast us all." A little girl in a flower dress ran up and pointed. "Mommy, there's a soda man." And that's when I saw it, her tiny finger pointed at the corner with me. The street cleaner. Sweeping near the elevator. A soda bottle in hand. I hadn't realized anyone would notice. But they did. Lana glanced at me. "You think they'll figure it out?" I asked. She shook her head. "Doesn't matter. What matters is you put the truth up there." And the truth was this: the mural wasn't about me. It wasn't even about her. It was about moments. Small ones. Missable ones. The kind of kindness you offer when no one's looking. And how those small moments change everything. I came back up to the rooftop a week after the crowds cleared. No more jazz quartet, no curated pastry platters, no suits pretending they'd always been part of the story. Just me, a chipped thermos of coffee, and that wall. The mural looked different now, not in the paint, but in the way it stood there. Solid. Quiet. Certain. It didn't ask for attention anymore. It just breathed. I walked the length of it slowly, brushing a hand along the railing as I passed the scenes. There was the alley girl with her violin. The L train slicing through clouds. The pigeons gathering around the corner vendor. The window with Lana's reflection. And in the bottom left corner, the soda man with a broom. Me. Still sweeping. Still showing up. Still not asking for anything. I didn't paint that corner for ego. I painted it because I wanted to remember that one tiny moment. That fraction of a second when I could have walked past, and didn't. The truth? I didn't fix the city. I didn't save anyone. I just helped one woman lift some boxes on a hot day and offered her my soda. That's it. That's all. But maybe kindness doesn't need to be bigger than that. Maybe the real murals aren't painted on walls, they're made in how we treat people when no one's watching. Lana still runs the Miradale. She turned down the promotion in San Francisco. Said the city still had stories to tell, and she wanted to be part of the ones nobody wrote down. As for me, I still sweep. Still push my trash can down cracked sidewalks between bus stops and alleyways. But I also paint again. Small projects. Murals for schools, rec centers, a cafe in little village that paid me with sandwiches and a hug. Gavin got me a spot in a group exhibit called Urban Pulse. Said my rooftop piece broke open something honest. I don't know about that. All I know is, I wake up each morning and remember who I am again. Not just Ray Martinez the sanitation worker. Not just the guy who used to paint. But the man who saw someone struggling, and stopped. And in return, the world cracked open. Just enough to let the light in. So if you ever walk by the Miradale on Ontario and look up at that rooftop, you might see it. A city wrapped in color. A woman in a window. And down in the corner, a man with a broom, frozen mid-step, offering a cold soda to a stranger. That's where the story began. Not with fame. Not with a gallery. But with a simple act of kindness. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life, is not walking past. And that, my friend, is a mural worth remembering. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you liked it, please like it, leave a comment below the video, and subscribe so you don't miss more impressive and interesting stories from people's lives.